Peace is definitely is the supporting element for the development of the nation as a whole, for the economy, for the society, political stability, and all these things are associated with peace. Uh, the current situation in Pakistan is not peaceful. There are multiple factors since the inception of Pakistan, since the time Pakistan came into being. There had been certain political, regional, and international factors because of which the unpeaceful situation existed since our independence. The current situation is cannot be considered independent of the earlier situation which occurred, which happened to be in Pakistan at the time of independence. It is actually the continuation of the unrest which existed just after independence when more than a million people migrated from India to Pakistan and from Pakistan to India. Since both the nations have certain stakes, and unfortunately, the stakes do not match. Pakistan, on one side, had been trying hard to maintain peace, but on the other side, unfortunately, there is a lack of tolerance, and that tolerance, when penetrates to the boundaries of Pakistan, then Pakistani people have to retaliate, and that is the main reason. We can go into many details, uh, and these details can be summed up in a single term, that is a cold war of agencies of the political people, and for right reason or the wrong reason, economy and the international factors as well, because all these factors joined together create all the time the situation of unrest. Uh, India, for example, does not accept the independence of Pakistan. India considers Kashmir, for example, its integral part, despite the fact that the international level agencies, including UN, uh, have accepted this as a dispute between the two nations, which need to be resolved, which is on the top of the list. The second important thing is unacceptable status of Pakistan and the Pakistani people on the part of India, which is very dangerous. I can give you the example of the matches. The matches played anywhere in the world between India and Pakistan. Now, many Muslims are slaughtered in India at the time of Pakistan's winning in any match, in any play in the world, and in so many other cases. Whenever there is some gain on the part of Pakistani people, Pakistani nation, India objects it. Take now the current example of the CPAC, China Pakistan Economic Corridor. What not India has done against Pakistan in terms of propaganda, as if Pakistan does not deserve it, despite the fact that Pakistan is placed in the region in very key position. Uh, Pakistan can connect, and Pakistan is connecting the region not only in the regional development, in the free trade area, in the political stability, and in the establishment of one belt, one road phenomena. Uh, so basically, the current situation, this is the current situation. And unfortunately, the current situation, the unpeaceful situation, unrest situation can also be attributed uh, to the penetration from abroad. It is in terms of terrorism, it is in terms of ethics, in terms of religiosity. Um, One of the touching point, one of the important thing on the pulse is the religion. Intolerance, unfortunately, Shia against Sunni, Sunni against Aladis, and in the region and the neighborhood, and even sometimes far from the neighborhood. There's a lot of interference, there's a lot of support to one group against the other group. Uh, Sometimes it is from the Middle East, sometimes it is from the neighborhood, quite neighborhood. Uh, Many countries have been supporting one group and the other countries then in retaliation have been supporting the other group. And in this sort of Cold War and the hidden war, it is Pakistan which has been suffering and still it is suffering. Now, coming to the role of academia, schools, colleges, and the universities, academia definitely can play a very important role. Now, in terms of academia, there are three main stakeholders: students on one part and their parents together is one component, one group. On the other part, the teachers, and the third is definitely the regulators, the government. Now, the role of academia cannot be determined independent of the other two very important stakeholders, the government and the parents and the students. Unfortunately, in academia, there is no such arrangement wherein these three major components and the stakeholders uh, should be combined together in different in different meetings, at different ceremonies. Now, in academia, whenever the extracurricular activities are conducted, uh, the parents are not given opportunity to view their uh, children, and similarly, the teachers, even in many academia, in many academic institutions, uh, remain irrelevant in many cases, in many events. Uh, so academia uh, in this case, in peacekeeping, can play a very important role. How the classroom lectures, for example, may be added, the contents of the courses may be added related to the peace, related to the factors which can bring in peace. Um, the activities uh, can be different activities can be now starting from the classroom teaching, for example. So if a teacher is teaching, for example, the courses of management sciences, in the management sciences, there is a very important component of his social behavior and the attitude. For example, the organization behavior is not independent of the human being's behavior, the attitude. Now, over there, when we are teaching the established theories related to organization behavior or the attitude, now there comes the topic of the tolerance, the peace, which is inevitable for the organizational development, for the development of business activities, for the development of, say, economy, and even this is also important for the political stability when we are teaching our students as a component of their course how to tolerate others while speaking. I remember when I was in the college in 1984 was the last union election, the student union. Unfortunately, now student unions do not exist in academia. Students' unions generally used to organize different activities wherein one group has to very tolerantly listen to the other group and then compose the answer and had to reply. Uh, but such opportunities no more exist in academia. That was a very important thing. Now that is why another benefit of student union was the students who were interested in the politics. They were trained and they learned how to tolerate. And then all these activities, the political activities among the students in academia, were totally irrespective of the belonging and affiliation with the Shia, Sunni, or anything else. So student leader was student leader, whether he belonged to Shia group or he belonged to Sunni group or Aladis. Nobody knew uh, about the religious affiliation of the leader. or the students contesting election. So unfortunately, in 1984, that was the last year when student union was banned, and afterwards the unrest started from the educational institutions. So unfortunately, when the organizations, even within academia, are with the name of Shia group, the Sunni group, the Punjabi group, the Sindhi group, now if you visit the established universities, Qaid-e-Azam University or International Islamic University, I'm talking about the public sector where such organizations are still allowed, not with the name of student union, but there are, I being the graduate of Qaid-e-Azam University, I remember there were so many organizations, Punjabi organization, Shia organization, Saraiki Sanj, Sindhi group. So all these groups actually emerged as a result of banning the student union in academia. So what I recommend on the top of the list, uh, the student union should be allowed, wherein every student who is contesting election is responsible, answerable to his supporters after 1 year. So this actually creates a tolerance because when you are answerable to each group, irrespective of his religious belonging. So, here I think the academia can play a role once the academia is allowed to play the role. So two very important things: number one, student union; number two, uh, the connection between the three major stakeholders: teachers, professors, students, parents, and the government. So unfortunately, there is no government representative participating in the student-related activities. Just a few people who are invited as a guest, uh, they participate, and that is the moment wherein even the speeches are, written by the invitee, by the inviting academia group uh, to make the guest uh, speech. So, uh, but there's nothing coming out of the heart when the guest speaker is even addressing the students. So otherwise, during the whole academic year, there's no interaction between among all these three groups. So these two things are very important. And the third one, I was talking about the content in the coursework. Uh, Activities of culture which are creating intolerance, that is actually as a result of the organization after the death of student union. Since students are now conducting uh, activities with the name of a certain organization, so they have to create an impression as if their group is special and their group is distinctive from the others, and as if they are better than the others. So we have actually stopped the culture mix up. So we have actually created constraints for the culture mix up. So I think the points which I mentioned earlier, uh, they can promote a culture wherein students, irrespective, even the teachers, irrespective of their religious belief, will participate, uh, and their and the tolerance will be the case only in place only then. Uh, the question of future of Pakistan. Uh, well, I'm very pragmatic and I have very dynamic approach in terms of the future of Pakistan. We just look at the current political situation. Uh, just 5 to 10 years back, nobody could think of the interference from the hidden forces. So the one who thought about the interference in the political and the economic activities uh, was in trouble. But now, a significant proportion of Pakistani community, Pakistani population is talking about who is interfering in the political system, who is interfering in the economic system, who creates trouble in the provision of justice to the nation. So, the future of Pakistan is bright. So I think these activities should be allowed. The activities actually, um, with the name of Millennium Development Goals, UNO, uh, 2000, that by the year 2015, poverty in the poor country would be halved in 15 years. Now, when they decided to reduce the poverty by 50% in the year 2000, they actually defined poverty in 15, 16 ways. There were 15, 16 definitions were given of poverty. For example, if a nation, if a person, if a community cannot speak out, cannot raise their voice, they don't have right to say uh, whatever they feel. So they were also declared as poor. Now this definition is very much universal because it was placed as agenda of the Millennium Development Goals. So fortunately, now the people of Pakistan, uh, many thanks to the media, uh, who are actually creating an environment, though they are not yet mature, but the media is getting mature gradually. But at least they are teaching people how to speak out, how to raise their voice. So people don't care even the political leaders don't care what they are saying. Now, though the things are bad, even sometimes the political leaders are not saying good things. But if they continue saying these things, if this process continues, the process of freedom and liberty to speak out, to raise voice, if this process continues, this will bring improvement. Because if there is flow of water, there are chances of improvement. There are chances of cleanliness. So if this environment continues, but the condition is that there should not be any interference. So if still there are controlling groups, then perhaps the improvement may revert and the peace may revert and the peace may not come. The people are very much vigilant and prudent and rational. uh, they are trying to distinguish between different groups, who is right, who is wrong. It is not that people cannot recognize or distinguish between who is right and who is wrong. People are understanding, people are comparing, and this is how the people are joining different groups. They are changing their affiliations from one group to another, just after having understood the facts and the realities. So now coming to the other question, the efforts of university to redefine their role in peace building. Yes, I think educational institutions and academia, they can play their role, and the efforts, what efforts they can put in order to redefine. I think the curricula, and curricula. This is a very important thing. Number two, uh, when following the redefined curricula, including the talk about the peace, talk about tolerance, and talk about uh, the competition and positive competition uh, in progressing. Uh, Very important thing is that students should be given chance to say no if something is really bad to them. If something they are not understanding, the student should raise their voice that they are not understanding at all. The Pakistani society, unfortunately, since its beginning, uh, has been experiencing a culture where the student is generally not allowed to ask question. Now, in the school is the beginning. In school, the student is never allowed to ask question, and if he or she is asking a question, he may be allowed once only. But second time, he may be given a slap, or maybe he may not be tolerated by the teacher. But now, the student asks a question. For example, in my university and even in other universities, when we grade a paper, the student asks, where are the mistakes? Why he has been given less marks? I think this culture needs to be promoted further in the educational institutions. And here comes the role of HEC, the Higher Education Commission, if we are talking about the HEIs, the Higher Education Institutions. Now, the education institutions, if not strictly, but most of the time, follow the instructions and the guidelines provided by the Higher Education Commission of Pakistan. I think as a policy matter, the HEC should take this as an initiative and as a challenge to bring about peace and peaceful culture in Pakistan. And education institutions should be compelled, and I would go to the extent they should be forced to design their curricula, and HEC should interfere and take regular reports on it, whether students and conduct regular surveys of the students, whether the teachers provide opportunities to their students to raise voice, to ask questions, and how far they are satisfied with the responses and the replies from their teachers, and how far they are satisfied. And this survey should be regularly conducted, at least 3 times during their degree program. One at the time of induction, just after 2 months of their admission or enrollment in the education institution, and then in the middle of the scheme of studies, and then in the end when they are graduating, and for which I would recommend a longitudinal study. Longitudinal study in the sense that the same respondent should be asked the same question repeatedly in order to judge how far there has been improvement in this education institution in terms of the curricula which was designed for specific purpose, that is tolerance, and tolerance which leads to peace. This is how the efforts of the academia can be redefined and can be put, and HEC here can play a very important role, because the education institution, if it is left to the education institutions, then every education institution follows its own path and it goes its own way. And then if education institutions are left to their own, every education institution, every university will come up with its own definition of peace and tolerance. So the goal and the effort should be defined universally by the Higher Education Commission, and then they should be implemented in the higher education commission, higher education institutions. About the critical thinking, very important. Critical thinking, immediately cannot be started. The culture of critical thinking cannot be created immediately at the university level. It should start from primary level, when a kid enters the education institutions at school level, nursery level. I recommend that by the age of 10, the student should not be taught physics, chemistry, English, this, that. Language, yes. Ethics, and ethics. And student should be involved in multiple activities, wherein one student should learn how to tolerate the other, and how to listen, and then how to respond, and where to respond positively, where to respond negatively, and what are the ways to respond negatively. You will see, if you cast your mind on different nations, different developed nations. Particularly, I would give the example of Canadian at the international forum, when they are talking, when they are responding, they respond even so politely that sometimes uh, we understand as if they are having peace with us. In fact, they are retaliating certain queries, which is difficult to understand whether they are fighting, responding, or they are talking. So actually, this is the intuitively built the attitude through education. And this education of tolerance, ethics, peace, this starts from school level. So it should come from school. So I think the existing structure of education cannot build critical thinking. So we can build the culture of critical thinking only if we do not directly uh, burden our students at school level with multiple books. There can be one book can be designed which may include different areas of studies, but most of the time in school should be spent on the practical learning of things. But that is missing. But critical thinking we cannot develop at the university level. Now look, when at the university level, there are certain courses, for example, research methodology, and even we offer courses with the title of critical thinking. Now, when here we start teaching critical thinking, or we start teaching students how to read articles and how to find out the gap. Now, this requires critical thinking. The existing gap in the studies, what is missing if a writer has written an article, then what is the thing which he focused more and what is the thing which is left out, and how would you plan to fill the gap? Now, this requires critical thinking. Similarly, even if critical thinking requires to debate a belief or some religious things wherein the critical thinking is allowed, जैसे कहा जाता है कि इज्तिहाद जो है जिसको हम कहते हैं, इज्तिहाद में lot of critical thinking is required. Now, ijtihad is from the religion. Now, ijtihad is actually finding solution to the new emerging challenges, resolving the new issues which are emerging from time to time. Now, if now at the university level, if we start thinking like this, or if we start the culture of debating like this, students start fighting with each other because they never learned how uh, to listen and then reply very peacefully, and how to tolerate the thinking and the argument of the other. So basically, students have not learned how to argue. So they have learned how to fight. Actually, so they should be taught how to argue, how to support their opinion with arguments, not with fight and not with arrogance. Uh, this is how critical thinking, I think, it should be started from the primary level education. Now, response to the currently occurring incidents of violence, very, very unfortunate, very, very unfortunate. Uh, Now, every person has his or her own belief, and Pakistan is not banana republic. Pakistan is having its constitution, and this constitution is very strongly built, and there is liberty of believing and keeping faith to every person, and I think uh, now the implementation is the problem. When it comes to implementation of the constitution, who has to implement this? Obviously, the after the legislative body, it comes to the executive who have to implement it with the help of judiciary, and judiciary is responsible for the interpretation of the constitution. I think the courts should take firm decision and very quick decision on such cases, so that it should give very firm message to the violent, the person who is responsible for this violence, and there should be zero tolerance whosoever and whether he belongs to one group, another, whether he belongs to minority group or majority group. Unfortunately, when a person who belongs to minority group is punished, uh, then there is tolerance on the other side. But, and even on the other side, on the majority side, if a person is committed a crime and he is punished, then the whole country is on violence. So this thing is very dangerous. And this can be reduced if the judiciary takes firm stand. They decide whatever is according to the law, whatever is according to the constitution, come what may. If once the verdict is given, it is given. Whether it is against the majority, whether it is in favor of minority, whatever, but uh, the judiciary has to play. And then judiciary has a lot of power according to the constitution. If judiciary is implementing its verdict, its decision, they can call even the very strongest group in the country to implement the decision, implement their verdict. So I think they should take firm stand on it. Then coming to the formal education and the curricula, uh, yes, the training of ethics actually varies from family to family, from house to house, which is known as an informal education. It is informal learning of kids from their families, from their household. Uh, as I mentioned earlier, if it is made part of the curricula and if it is made mandatory to learn ethics, to experience ethics at school level for by the age of 10, and after the age of 10 they start learning the other subjects, I think only then it can serve the purpose. Otherwise, the formal training or speeches or since there is nothing formal or organized or has been made part of the syllabus, that is why everyone becomes the leader of preaching whatever he understands and whatever he believes. uh, this is wrong. So the formal way of educating the nation is make part of the curricula, and then making part of the curricula, and then the governments, the provincial governments, the local governments, and the federal government, they should check whether the curricula is being followed or not related to related to the ethics, related to the tolerance. So I think this is how we can formally add our contents to the curricula and implement. Thank you.